Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Wherever you are in the world, welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Carl Anthony, and this is AutoVision News live at AutoSens and InCabin, USA. We are in the heart of the Motor City at the Huntington Place in downtown Detroit. Joining us is Dave Tokic, VP of Corporate Development at Torc Robotics. Dave is a deep tech executive with over 25 years of experience in the automotive, semiconductor, and electronic design and automation industries. Most recently, he was VP of Marketing and Business Development at Algalux, which was later acquired by Torc for their AI-based products that provide robust perception and camera optimization. Dave, welcome. Good to see you again.
Yes, Carl. Great to be back.
It's really nice to see you. And when I read that part about your bio, robust perception, I thought, how many times have you and I talked about that over the years?
We sure have a few years. Yep, that's for sure.
So now you're in the autonomous trucking space. Torc Robotics is going after autonomous trucking. What makes that such a compelling space for you to address right now?
Yeah, so the space of trucking is probably the best space for autonomy.
Sure.
There's a very clear business case, and there's really a massive market. Today, there's roughly about $940 billion sized market, growing to about 1.2 trillion, and that's U.S. only.
Sure.
In 2030. And out of that, roughly, we believe around 600 billion is available for autonomous trucking. So you're dealing with a very massive market, and there is a lot of drivers that make it a natural fit. Certainly, while it's a cyclical market, there's ongoing line of sight on driver shortage, as well as an aging driver population that's not getting replenished. So big need there. The other thing that autonomy can bring is elasticity to fleets.
Okay.
And what that means is today we're dealing with regulations that limit driver time behind the wheel, like 11 hours per day in the US, as well as very dynamic demand. And so it gives you this ability to kind of absorb that and react to that. So those are just a couple of examples there. But the other big piece is providing more autonomy with the right systems around there, drive more safety on the road as well. So there's a lot of really beautiful benefits for trucking.
Of course. Kind of a two-part question here, Dave. With regard to Torc, why do you believe that you're well positioned to be a leader in autonomous trucking? And then maybe second part of that question is, what differentiates Torc from other players?
Yeah, I think Torc kind of uniquely brings an interesting heritage that combines robotics with world-class AI and also trucking expertise. And I think that kind of sets Torc apart.
Sure.
So Torc is a subsidiary of Daimler Truck. We were acquired about 5 years ago by Daimler. But Torc itself has been around for 19 years and was one of the top 3 finishers at the 2007 DARPA Urban Challenge, where basically the who's who of autonomy came out from that. And so we bring a huge heritage of that. On the AI front, with the Algalux acquisition we talked about, in addition to what Torc had, we have a very deep bench of probably best-in-class, world-class AI led by our former Algalux CTO, Felix Heide, so who's all over the place from an AI perspective.
Sure.
And if we dig a little bit deeper into that, the Daimler relationship itself, so maybe touching on that a bit, Daimler brings the largest footprint from a trucking perspective.
Sure.
So Daimler in the U.S., or Daimler owns about 40% of trucks, long-haul trucks. In specifically long-haul, it's 60%.
Okay.
And in the U.S. And so that provides a huge advantage from a market perspective. Daimler also is already in production with a autonomous-ready redundant chassis. So that has like the driver control, steering, networking, electrical redundancy, which provides the requirements for autonomy. In addition, they have a huge network, biggest network of maintenance and support services
Yeah.
And the whole autonomy stack is a production stack built into the production trucks. It's not an add-on or anything like that. So Daimler itself gives huge benefits. Torc brings the know-how of the whole autonomy stack.
Right.
And the last thing I think that's an interesting piece is that we interact a lot with the trucking community, and that I think also is a big differentiator. Since Daimler owns kind of long-haul trucking, they are hugely connected with the fleets. We are having these relationships and discussions with the big fleets. We have our customer community with Covenant and CR England and Schneider and Uber Freight, et cetera, and also doing pilots with some of them publicly that we've announced, I should say, that allow us to have on-road freight that we're driving with our vehicles to build the expertise needed and understand their requirements. So I think a lot of things differentiate Torc.
Yeah. Well said, Dave. Well said. Regulation challenges. What are your thoughts on that? What are the considerations there for Torc in the regulatory landscape?
Yeah, I think first to start off, Torc is fiercely within Torc's DNA is safety.
Yeah.
So we have some of the who's who in the safety and regulatory community that are part of Torc.
Sure.
We're working both at the federal, state, and local levels from a regulation and safety perspective. We actually just did a Texas Road Show for that was very well received. And since we're focused on long-haul trucking, kind of those big routes, starting in the south, where there's, friendly environments as well as good weather, that helps.
Sure.
But on the regulation side, the interesting takeaway is that there's nothing really stopping us from driving autonomously on highways today on most corridors. As long as the vehicle itself, like the tractor, has the same driver controls, mirrors, etc.
Sure.
Those are what's under regulation today. We do see that evolving over time as regulators get their arms more wrapped around this. And that's why we're working really closely with them to understand how to best move this whole industry forward.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got this excellent overview of Torc. Look at the regulatory landscape. What about the infrastructure? What infrastructure considerations need to be had in order to support the autonomous trucking capability that we're talking about?
Yep. So with Torc, we're doing what's called a hub-to-hub model. So over time, as we expand our capabilities, we'll go dock-to-dock, as they say. Mm-hmm. But hub-to-hub allows us to start with the big freight yards, with all the trailers, and then do the long haul to the next hub, and then there's some drayage to the dock.
Yes.
But this is the long 250, 400, 800 plus mile travel that is, takes a toll on drivers and so on. So automating that is, again, back to my earlier point, a huge benefit for the fleets. And also imagine we're not limited by the 11-hour restriction on drivers. So you can get at least two runs with a single truck.
Got it.
But we need to ensure that the hub is enabled for Torc autonomy. Right. And it can be as simple as a porta potty and some transfer resources there to move trailers around and hook up to our tractors.
Sure.
Or it can be more sophisticated with fuel and a weight station and so on. So we really actually are more listening to our customers to see the infrastructure that they need. And that's this whole community of customers that we have to make sure that we have the right type of hub for their requirements.
Right.
And then from a highway perspective, this really goes back down to our whole autonomy stack, the perception stack, the mapping that we do, et cetera, to ensure that the routes that we're going on, say starting on I-40 in the south, are that we're well prepared to handle that.
Right. Dave, this next question is going to go back to what we used to always talk about before, and that is robust perception. Of course, we're here at AutoSens and InCabin, so that's a big topic of discussion. But what about these trucks in bad weather, rain, fog, snow? I grew up in Iowa, so close to Interstate 80. Yep. You got a long stretch there all the way across the state, January, February, all those semi-trucks going. How does Torc do it? What are the capabilities of Torc when you have less than ideal weather?
Yeah, we try to follow what drivers do today. They don't drive in really bad weather.
Yeah.
So we actually are, it's humorous, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
What we want to do is start in the conditions that ultimately are the safest. So going back to what I said earlier, safety is part of our DNA. We will only drive when we are comfortable with how safe it is.
Yeah.
And even today, in bad weather, in high winds, drivers will pull over because the truck is a much different vehicle than a passenger car.
Sure.
And so we have this safety envelope that we want to work within. And that, over time, what we expect is that as we evolve our algorithms and capabilities, we'll be able to expand this, what's called the operational design domain, the ODD,
Yes.
to be able to travel and operate beyond that. And AlgoX brings great heritage there in terms of the robust perception that we had. And so I think there was such a great augmentation to what Torc brings with the AI and robust perception expertise that AlgoX brings. So starting out, we're going to drive safe, and that gives fleets a lot of value. And then we're just going to expand regionally into more difficult weather areas of the U.S. and beyond. So,
well, you're hitting on something important, Torc's expansion. And I've seen Torc all over LinkedIn. Of course, you and I are connected on LinkedIn, but I see your updates all the time. So we're hearing more and more about Torc. What's on the horizon? What's next?
That's great. Well, we've got a lot to do. We've publicly communicated that our production launch and scaling with our fleet customers will begin in 2027.
Okay.
And leading up to that, I briefly mentioned that Daimler already has the production-ready or autonomy-ready vehicle in production today. So we're working with those vehicles. The other benefit is we've already chosen all of our suppliers for, say, the sensor stack, et cetera, as well as compute. So, and those will be produced on the production vehicle. So it's not something like an add-on, et cetera.
Right.
Huge benefit there. The other piece coming forward is that we are very proud of our Daimler partner.
Absolutely.
They not only with the production autonomous vehicle, which is a combustion engine vehicle, but they just recently announced their e-Cascadia, which is their electric truck. And right this week, actually at ACT, they announced the production view of the electric vehicle with the Torc stack from a demonstrator perspective. And so a lot of really exciting things moving forward. But right now we are solidly focused on productization because Torc is, we're done with the researchy R&D stuff for autonomy. Right now it's about productization, which implies how do we operationalize the vehicles with our customers and do all the validation needed to ensure that we're hitting our safety targets to then go for that production scaling. So we're laser focused on that right now.
Yeah, Dave, I can't wait to see the updates here in a few months from now,
for sure.
Let alone this time next year, right? So this brings back a lot of memories doing this, from the AlgoX days and now, with Torc. So allow me just to say that from all of us here at AutoVision News and Sense Media, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Have a great rest of the show. Safe travels back home when all of this event ends here in Detroit. And let's do this again sometime, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Absolutely, Carl. Yeah, thank you for having me.
More to come from AutoSens Day 2024 at the Huntington Place in downtown Detroit, alongside Dave Tokic. I'm Carl Anthony, AutoVision News.